and welcome to Series 5, Episode 2 of In Suspense, a podcast and vodcast for fans and writers of crime fiction. I'm Lauren North, and my co-host is, of course, the lovely Leslie Cara. Hello, Leslie.
Hello, Lauren.
In our last episode, we chatted to the phenomenal Callie Taylor, didn't we, about putting the thrills in thrillers, which was a really fascinating chat with her. And also in between that, we've also had our first mini-sode go out, which has been very popular with psychologist and author Philippa East. And the first topic was, and my mind's just gone blank.
It was dealing with waiting for submissions.
That's right. That's perfect one. Which has been a great success, and we're really, really pleased with all the comments that we've had, and just the support that we've had from it, I think. So we're really excited. We've got the next one coming out next week, as well as today's show as well, which is out this week.
I can't wait to listen to the others. Actually, I listened to it again, the mini-sode with Philippa last night, and it's nice because when we're actually recording them, we don't always, although we're listening obviously, but we don't always fully take in what she's saying, because you need to just be listening quietly for it to all to make sense. And it was really reassuring listening to it yesterday.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was an amazing episode. And today, haven't we got an exciting episode today? Leslie, we've both been looking forward to this, haven't we? Very much. We have today the phenomenal and global best-selling author Linwood Barclay on the show with us shortly. And he is going to be talking to us about keeping pace. But before we crack on with that, Leslie, how have you been?
Well, I've been very well, actually. I've had a little bit of a break this last week because I sent the first section of my new novel off to my editor. And so I'm actually having to put in place some of Philippa's strategies now because I'm waiting for feedback, which I'm expecting later today. So that's all good. And I've been sort of just, doing some other things, starting some other little projects, all those things that you don't have time to do normally. But, when you were talking earlier about Philippa and the minisodes, I was thinking maybe when the 6 episodes with Philippa are finished, maybe we should get other authors on to do other minisodes if there are other authors with particular skill sets,
Oh, that's such a good idea. Like Facebook adverts and things like that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I was just sort of playing around with ideas, and we spoke to C.L. Taylor recently, and she's really good at crafting, isn't she? I thought we could have a crafting corner for authors, show us all how to knit a pair of socks to keep our feet warm, or to make a felted animal or something, so that while we're waiting for submissions, at least we've got something to do. And if it all goes wrong and we get the wrong reply, we've at least got a soft animal that we can cry into.
Yes, I love that idea.
Good idea, isn't it? I haven't mentioned it to Callie yet. She's probably too busy, but or we could speak to Trevor Woods. We could get him back on, and he could do a series of minisodes about desert survival while you've got vomiting and diarrhea, because he's isn't he? But no, I'm probably confusing listeners who've only just joined. But if you want to tune into, I think it's Series 4, Episode 5 with Trevor Woods, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes.
But yes, so what else? We've got lots of planning to do, haven't we, for our next?
Yes, we have. Next series. Yeah, but we're doing that on the train, aren't we? Because we're both going up to Whitley Bay together for the Bay Tales live show. We are both in a panel. On a panel,
I guess.
So yes, we're going to have a lovely train journey. So I feel sorry for anyone sitting next to us, listening to us talk and talk and talk. It was funny though, because I texted you, Leslie, didn't I? And said, I'm really looking forward to catching up properly. And then you came back and were like, yes, and we'll also have time to read and maybe have a snooze just in case, I was just thinking I was going to talk too much. No, it's fine.
Like that.
It's fine.
Well, I thought maybe almost 3 hours of non-stop talking might be, although we'll probably manage it, Lauren.
We will. Yes, I agree. Yes, a little bit reading and snoozing.
Yeah, we'll give it our best shot. Yeah,
we will.
So so apart from that, I haven't been doing well. What I've been doing, I've been sort of just sorting out, doing some admin. I've got everything in one file now. Do you know? I had this. I don't know about you. I try out different admin systems. Nothing really gets me organised, but I feel really confident about this latest one. Because in the past I've had loads of different files for different things. Now I've just got the one file with all different sections, and I've made templates for like different book deals and things like that. And so I can just keep, and whenever I get an email coming now, I can just add it to my template. And this is the theory anyway.
I mean, I like that. I mean, I love the fact that you say, oh, do you try out different admin systems? You're suggesting I have even one admin system that isn't just throw everything into this cupboard that's next to me and sort it out every year and promise myself I'll never get it this messy again but always do.
I try and be on top of things. Sometimes it just gets me down if I've got all bits of paper everywhere and I don't feel on top of things. But
yeah,
I've even got a spreadsheet now for proofs. When they come in, what date they're being published. Oh, I'm just, shit hot at the moment.
Oh, wow. I love that. Can you come and be shit hot for me as well? Because I'm terrible at all that. My study's such a mess and it always gets me down, and then I'll tidy it up and then it gets messy within about 5 minutes. Because I think my study's also the dumping ground of the house. So anything like that needs to be taken back to shops and stuff gets put in here as well. Yeah. Much to my annoyance.
Yes, that is annoying. And yes. You've done something rather wonderful lately, Lauren, haven't you? You've done something in memory of your late father, which is a really wonderful offer.
Yes, I have. So if you haven't seen it on Twitter, I have purchased a weekend package to Harrogate Crime Writing Festival, which is happening in July, which I talk about a lot because I really love it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, but I'm staying in a house with some friends. But I bought this weekend package at the Cairn Hotel, which is where I stayed on my first visit. And it's got all the Rover, and it's got breakfast is included and lunch is included. And it's got all the panels you can go to. And I just think it'd be such a great opportunity. So I really wanted to give back a bit and give that to a writer, author, published or unpublished, self-published, whatever, who just needs something nice happening to them and perhaps has never been before and would just really feel like they'd benefit from going. So yeah, it was just because my dad was obviously a really kind person, and I think he always thought about doing things that didn't necessarily make much difference to him but knew would make massive difference to other people. So I've sort of tried to think about that. So something.
A really lovely offer, really generous offer, and I'm sure that your dad would be so proud of you.
I'm sure he would, yes. But I'm yes, that's open. It's all on my website, and I'll put something in the comments on YouTube and the podcasting thing. If there's anyone listening who fits the bill and is interested in applying, then please do.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yes. But other than that, I finished my edits for my first romance, which was good. And then I've been planning, I've got 2 books I'm planning simultaneously and having little moments of which one am I going to write. It's all going okay this week, I think.
Fantastic.
Yes. So let's talk about keeping pace for a moment before we talk to the lovely Linwood, because it's such a tricky thing, isn't it? Keeping the pace going. And I think I might have said this before, but I was teaching a workshop on Saturday for Suffolk Libraries, and it was one of the things that I talked about there was how you have to give the reader this downtime so that they can catch their breath between really exciting scenes. And it's one of the things that I was asked to add in to Safe at Home, in that I didn't have enough time for the reader to process what was going on. I'd gone too pacey, if you like. So it is that strange balance of wanting to turn the pages, but also needing to process things, isn't it?
It really is. And it is a very fine balance. I read a book not so long ago, won't say which one, but I felt that some of the downtime was perhaps went on for too long.
Yeah.
And I think, but it was a brilliant novel. But I think that's the trouble, isn't it? You've got to read these things aloud, or you've got to get other readers to read them and tell you when they're flagging or when you think they're flagging. But I think to have too long a downtime in a thriller is probably a mistake. But as you say, not to have any downtime. I've read books where it's literally action packed, and you don't have a chance to breathe or collect your thoughts, and that can be just a little bit too overwhelming. So
yeah, and it also maybe doesn't always give the character a chance to develop as well, and to learn enough about them to really root for them as well. So I think, yeah, it is, like we've said, a balance. But I think obviously the master of pace and the king of pacing is, of course, Linwood Barclay, who's joining us, isn't he?
he certainly is, all the way from somewhere near Toronto.
Okay, exciting. I wish we were going out to visit him. That'd be quite exciting.
I mean, you know, we're available to travel out to Canada if anyone wants to fly us out there. Lauren and I do only fly business class, though. Just putting that out there. No, shall we welcome Linwood on?
Yes,
Do you think
welcome
it's
to
about
the
time
show.
we stopped our chit chat and got down to business? Okay, welcome Linwood
Welcome,
Barclay.
Linwood.
Hello and welcome to In Suspense, Linwood Barclay. We are absolutely delighted to have you on the show with us. And before we start questioning you about your latest novel, I'm going to read out your bio.
All righty.
So here we go. Right, Linwood Barclay is a New York and Sunday Times best-selling author with 20 novels to his credit. He spent 3 decades in newspapers before turning full-time to writing thrillers. His books have been translated into more than 24 languages, sold millions of copies, and he counts Stephen King among his fans. Many of his books have been optioned for film and TV. A series has been made in France, and he wrote the screenplay for the film based on his novel Never Saw It Coming. Born in the US, his parents moved to Canada just as he was turning 4, and he's lived there ever since. He lives near Toronto with his wife, Neetha. They have 2 grown children. And Linwood, your latest book is called Take Your Breath Away, and I can tell you for one thing, it really took my breath away. I read it in, probably 2 sittings, I think, before Christmas, and it really got me out of a little reading slump that I'd been in lately. So thank you very, very much for that.
I'm delighted. I'm glad to hear that. When I hear people say, oh, they read a book in 1 or 2 sittings, I think, if I ever read a book in 1 or 2 sittings, and I think maybe a Dr. Seuss book, that might be it.
Well, for the benefit of our listeners, do you mind telling us a little bit about what Take Your Breath Away is all about? Let's give us the premise.
Yeah, sure. It's well, first of all, it's about this fellow named Andy, who's tragically, his wife about 6 years ago had vanished, and the police assumed or figured that maybe he was behind it, that he'd killed her, although no body was ever found. And he's been struggling to get his life back together after all this time. He's met someone new. He's moved a little bit away from where he used to live. In fact, the house that he used to live in with his wife, Bree, who had disappeared, they were going to remodel that house, rebuild it, but after he sold it, the new owners, they razed it. They tore the building down. They built a new house on that site. So it's 6 years later, and one Saturday morning, a woman shows up at the location where they used to live, and she gets out of her car and she looks and she says, "Where's my house? My house is gone." And a neighbor looks and thinks, this looks a little bit like this woman who's disappeared 6 years ago, and she's got some groceries in the back of the car, and she's acting as though she's only been gone for about an hour to go pick up some groceries. And she comes back and says, "Where is my house?" And then she vanishes. And that's our starting point for Take Your Breath Away.
Amazing. And I've got the proof here, and I loved it too, and I raced through it, and I really loved the sort of all the different flawed characters, and I wasn't quite sure ever who to trust, and that seemed to quite change as well. I mean, I thought that was so brilliantly done. You mentioned the woman turning up on the driveway saying, "Where's my house?" That sort of kicks off the novel. Was that sort of the first idea that you had? How did you develop the premise? What was the inspiration for Take Your Breath Away?
It's funny. I'd had this notion in my head for several years about, it was just that scene, someone showing up and saying, "Where's my house?" And I think I probably did at least 2 other books in the interim, because I thought, I really can't figure out where that goes from there. And so, but the idea had always been floating around in my head about this particular scene. And I was thinking, well, is this someone who had amnesia, or is this someone who, I was thinking, well, how does it make any sense? And then finally I hit on what I thought was a solution. And that's when I started writing Take Your Breath Away. Once I had that part figured out. Because I mean, for me, generally, when any book kind of starts with a really big what if, or why did this happen? And before I start writing, I kind of want to know what it was. I need to know where I'm going to end up before I start. So once I had that worked out, I was okay.
And Linwood, you are well known for really great high concept hooks, aren't you? And you've brought out so many novels with such great hooks. And I was wondering, or we were wondering, with your extensive newspaper experience, are some of the characters and the stories and things that you remember from your years working in the newspaper industry, are they the sort of things that feed your imagination? Because I was I was interviewing Fiona Barton recently at a literary festival, and she, as you probably know, was a journalist for a long while. And she said that she feels lucky because she has her own personal archive of characters and situations to draw on. And I wondered if that was the same for you.
Not so much, not as much as you might think. There are some of my earlier novels. I did sort of 4 very sort of funny sort of comic thrillers way back when about a character named Zach Walker who worked at a newspaper. Some of those characters in there are maybe slightly based on people I worked with, or encountered in my job, but not as much as you might think. I think that working in a newspaper shaped sort of how I work more than what I write about, because. And I was 26, 27 years at the Toronto Star, the largest circulation paper in Canada. And for about half of that time, I was columnist, writing 3 columns a week. The first half, I was an editor of all sorts of different capacities. So what working in a newspaper taught me everything about deadlines, and it taught me that writing is a job, and that it's not precious. You're not sitting around waiting for the muse to strike. You just get to work. So I think more than anything, work ethic is what newspapers taught me, and meeting deadlines. How deadlines mean everything, are sacrosanct. And I mean, when you were a columnist, when I was writing for the paper, I couldn't just phone the editor and say, just wasn't feeling it today. I just couldn't pull it together. And that's a quick way to not have that job anymore. And so there's that. I've had other experiences in my life that I think have exposed me to a sort of interesting cast of characters. I mean, when I was in my teens, my parents had bought what you call caravans, bought a trailer park cottage resort that I essentially took over running when I was 16 after my dad died. And that introduced me to a whole wild sort of cast of characters. But I draw from, everyday life, the news, and so forth for the people that show up in my books. And sometimes they're just completely invented creations.
Wow, that's a good mind to be in.
It is, yeah. I think the mindset thing makes such a difference for making sure you do sit down and write every day. So that's a really good point. You mentioned a few earlier novels. Your breakthrough in 2007 with No Time for Goodbye was probably like the novel that really broke you out. And it was this book's global success that enabled you to have your job as a journalist, to leave your job as a journalist and start writing full time. Did you have any inkling when you were writing that book or before it was published that it would be as successful as it was? Did you set out thinking, I'm going to write a book now that's going to go that extra mile?
No. Not really. The intention, however, was. As I say, I'd done these 4 sort of comic thrillers that got some nice reviews, but didn't sell particularly well. And so it was my agent who said, you know what, you need to write sort of a big book with a great hook and so forth. So that I did set out to do that. I set out to do a book that I would be more popular than the comic thrillers. But in my wildest dreams, I could not have anticipated how big a hit it would be. It was a Richard and Judy pick and became, I think, the fastest-selling Richard and Judy book ever, and finished out 2008 as the single best-selling novel of the year in the UK. And then it was a bestseller in Germany, it was a bestseller in France, and it was, so it just kind of went insane. And I had absolutely no idea that would happen, and I'm still not even sure why it happened. It's just, sometimes I would say to my editor one time in England, I said, why do you think that was a hit? And he said, well, It had trees on the cover. People like trees.
I'm just going to make a note to call my editor in a minute and let them know.
So, we think that was it. People like woods. That's it.
Oh, I'm sure it was a lot more than that. No, it's a brilliant novel. And you've been called the king of pacey thrillers, Linwood. And our topic for today, because we always have a topic each week, is keeping pace. And I think in one of your previous interviews, I've read that you like your stories to move like a rock rolling down a hill, which is a great analogy, gathering that momentum. So my question is, and I'm asking for a friend, how do you do that? How do you achieve that level of momentum in all your novels?
Well, and it is kind of sometimes in the early part of the book, it's a sort of a slower build, but then I think that's that pushing that rock up the hill. And then you hit a point where everything starts to go. And it's not as if this is a sort of a conscious decision as to how to make that happen. But what I try to do is, first of all, I think if I'm getting bored, the reader's bored. So I'm trying to maintain my own interest. And the way I can maintain my own interest is to sort of keep throwing surprises at myself and at the reader. And I like to try to end chapters in such a way that you want to go to the next one. I always feel that, the end of a chapter is the great place for a reveal or a twist or something unexpected. I always think, I'll read other authors and they'll do some amazing reveal in the middle of a chapter and I want to scream, no, don't do it there. This other place, doesn't make any sense, because I think there's something about chapter endings, like even graphically, because you have this sort of white space at the end of a chapter and then this white space at the top of the next page where the chapter number is. And I said, that white space sends a message that something's happened here that's important. We want you to think about it for a second. So that's part of it as well. And I think that there need to be, and here's a cliche, but there need to be sort of a lot of balls in the air as you're going towards the end of the book. There's a lot of things happening perhaps in different places that are all heading towards a kind of focal point where everything's going to kind of, connect and crisscross and intersect. So that's, I don't know how to write a manual on it or how to explain it. It's just that I think if I'm getting bored, and maybe I have a short attention span, if I'm getting bored, then the readers will. So.
That's amazing advice. Thank you. You've obviously been writing for a number of years now, and have really honed your craft. What have you learned, do you think, in the writing process over the course of your career? Has it evolved into what you've said about pushing the boulder up the hill and going down again? Or do you feel that's always been there?
Well, no, I feel like I kind of learn with every book. I mean, I think the one I'm writing is the 22nd novel for adults. They did a couple books for kids and so on. And I'll make some kind of a mistake in book 19 that I haven't made before. And I think, well, I'll learn from that. I won't do that again. Then in book 20, I make a new one. And so, I always find that, I'll learn, that there's something that don't work or and so forth, and how to go about it. So I do think there's a kind of a learning process that goes on. And it's funny, it's like, I think, does it get easier or does it get more difficult? It gets a little easier in the sense, well, I've done this before, I faced this, I know I can do this. But the part that gets harder is, how can I give readers what they expect and would want from a book from me, but not give them the same thing I've given them before? So how can I come up with something that's new and original, I hope, that they'll like and think, oh yeah, this is really good. You don't want them saying, oh yeah, this is like this last one or the other one. And so that's the challenge, is to give you what you've gotten before without giving you the same thing that you had before.
Yeah. Do you sometimes sort of come up with an idea and think, oh damn, I did that in book 6 or something?
Well, it may be like sometimes little scenes, like I might be a little something. I mean, I think back in a book called Tap on the Window, I had, somebody hearing a cell phone ringing and out in sort of a field somewhere, which led them to a body. And I thought, oh yeah, I think I did that in another book. And so I think there are probably little tropes or things that are familiar to me that I end up doing again. I mean, I'm just working on this book today, part of which, they're finding somebody inside one of these large mobile home trailers. And I think, oh yeah, I had a big trailer in Find You First. But I lived in one for years, so they just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really funny. I was wondering actually about the you've talked about your process, but I find it interesting that you're writing. You're in Canada, and I was wondering about the crime writing and the crime reading community in Canada, because I know that there's a very strong tradition of literary fiction there, isn't there? And I believe, is it right that you didn't get a Canadian publisher until book 7?
Yes, that's right. When I started writing my first crime novels, The Four Before, No Time for Goodbye, I couldn't get a Canadian publisher interested. I mean, now we had a Canadian distributor, so I mean, we did get a U.S. publisher, and their wing in Canada distributed the book, but I didn't have strictly a Canadian publisher, and I didn't have one until 2 books after No Time for Goodbye became kind of a global hit on the other side of the ocean. And so, so I think it was book 7, the Canadian publisher bought out part of my US contract so they could be my true publisher here. So it took a while. And Canada does have a very rich, literary tradition, and with good reason. I mean, most recently, people like, Margaret Atwood and so forth. And I grew up and was befriended and was mentored to a point by another sort of Canadian literary icon named Margaret Lawrence, who wrote in the 60s and 70s and so forth. And so I think a lot of publishers were sort of gravitated in that direction and were less interested in doing the genre. But I think things have kind of evolved from that point of view. There's a lot of us who are, who are in Canada who have publishers here who are publishing and doing very well with crime fiction.
So that must have been quite interesting when you first started off then, that all your success was in other countries. It must have felt a bit surreal. Did you feel a little distanced from it?
It really did, especially in the summer of 2008, because No Time for Goodbye in paperback, when it was Richard Judybeck, I think, a 7 or 9, I think it was 7 straight weeks at #1 in the UK. And there were, billboards and all kind of stuff. I didn't see any of it. I was over here. And by the time I got over there, I went over in October, I think, for something. And I mean, it was still a bestseller, but the big hoopla part of it had kind of passed. And it was funny, I went into the Waterstones, I think on Piccadilly, around there. And I went in and I said, do you like people to sign books? And he said, the store clerk, yeah, sure, what's the book? And I said, No Time for Goodbye. And he went, sort of like, there's a wall of them over here. And so he was great. He was a lovely guy. And, I signed about 200 copies. But the big hoopla was over. But yeah, so it did feel very strange. It was like, it didn't feel quite real because it wasn't happening, in my neighborhood.
And of course, there wasn't so much social media then, was there? The way, it was around, but it wasn't quite as big as it was. And when was Twitter? When did Twitter come into being?
That was 2002, I think Twitter was born.
Was it? Was it that early? Gosh.
I think it was later than that. I don't think I got on Twitter until about 2011.
Oh, maybe I'm probably a bit early.
And I think I joined Twitter in 2012. Yeah,
that's
I reckon it came into being about 2009. I don't know. Well, we can find that out. But I was just thinking, so like if that had happened now, and you'd be aware of what was happening, and you'd see the pictures of it everywhere because you'd see it plastered all over social media, wouldn't you? But of course,
that's true. That's true. Although even in 2008, there was a bit of that, and people were sending pictures, like ads in the tube or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's something like being there, something like, going down into the tube and seeing some massive, mural or poster or whatever for your book, is to see it.
Yeah.
So or to walk into a bookstore and actually see it, it displayed prominently. So I'm fortunate that I've been able to get over a number of times, with new releases since then. Certainly not in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but I've had opportunities to get over there and enjoy, what goes around with, a book coming out.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting. It's such a dream, isn't it, to see your book cover on a billboard or on the tube. I'm sure Leslie and I are like, keeping our fingers crossed.
The rumour was,
the rumour was
billboards on the station.
I'll keep my fingers crossed by myself then. That's fine. Go on, off you
go. The other two haven't been.
Now, I heard a rumour that your next book is slightly different. It's more of a Michael Crichton style of novel.
That's true. There still will be this year and next year the sort of usual kind of what you would expect from me. But it must be at least 4 years ago now, I wrote a novel that I would call sort of more like a Michael Crichton thriller, more of a tech element. There was a strong tech element to it. And I would describe it as, think Jurassic Park, but instead of dinosaurs, it's self-driving cars.
Whoa. Oh, cool.
We have an island test community where everyone is given an autonomous vehicle, and a virus gets introduced to the system, and all the vehicles become basically murderous. It's kind of like being on an island with 1,000 Christines.
Oh, wow, love it.
And so that's the plot, and it's called Look Both Ways. And it
brilliant title.
I love it.
Title.
Thank you. I actually came up with that one. And it'll be out. I think it's coming out in the UK as an ebook. Actually sometime in the summer, and then there'll be an actual print edition before the end of the year.
Amazing. Well, we're going to look out for that as well.
Yeah, and it was a long time coming because, first of all, it was different than from my other stuff. So the publishers were sort of like, "What are you going to do with this?" But they liked it. It's a fun thriller, and it has, I think, all the elements you expect in my book. There's lots of twists. There's, it moves like a freight train. There's a strong sort of human element in it all, despite the fact that it has this techie element. But it was different, and so the thing was, well, what do we do with this? And finally, they said, yeah, we're bringing it out, and it's coming out this year.
Oh, that's really exciting. I can't wait to read that, because I've always thought that cars, not necessarily self-drive cars, but cars are weapons, aren't they? They have been used as weapons. They can be terrifying, as we've seen. Especially
in this book. But, I've always done, I grew up surrounded by sort of automotive imagery, because back in the, throughout the 50s and early 60s, all of the advertisements for cars in magazines and brochures were all illustration and not photography. And my father drew those cars. He was a commercial.
Wow.
He was a commercial illustrator, and drew these beautiful airbrush renderings of automobiles, and his work would be seen in national magazines in the US and so forth. So I just grew up surrounded by that, and I always loved cars. And when this whole idea of self-driving cars, I'm not all excited about it, because I kind of like driving. But I thought, there's how could that go horribly wrong? And it does. So
exciting. I'm really excited about that one as well, looking out for it. Now, Linwood, we do like to ask our guests what they're reading, or have they read anything exciting recently. So have you got any books that you'd like to give a shout out to?
What have I been reading? Actually, I went back to the classics right now. I'm reading one of Ross MacDonald's Lou Archer novels, The Blue Hammer. Ross MacDonald, of course, was at one time considered part of this holy trinity of Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, Ross MacDonald, who was writing crime novels through the late 40s and into the 70s. And he was someone who actually I got to know and had a long correspondence with. So I went back to one of his. But, I'm always ripping through things. I just got the new Michael Robotham, but my wife grabbed it, wouldn't let me have it. What I did read that, and the thing that I've read most recently that kind of really blew me away was Never by Ken Follett. And I hadn't really read Follett for a long time, because I read the early thrillers like Key to Rebecca and Triple and all those the shorter, fast-paced thrillers. And Man from St. Petersburg, I think is another one. So, and I read all those like way back when. And then he started writing these very well received, but these rather massive sort of historical novels. And I usually tend to see anything that's over 300 pages, and I'm like, So,
me too.
But I picked this up and I looked at what it was about, and how it's set in the present day, and how sets of circumstances can go off in weird directions that you could never predict, sort of globally, and global political intrigue. And it's one hell of a book. I mean, it follows a lot of different storylines, but they're all really interesting. The characters are really well drawn, and the book's terrifying. And so I was quite taken with that. I read Lisa Gardner's new one. I think it's called One Step Too Far. It's just coming out now, that I thought was really, really good. But the thing is, I've been doing so much reading, even more than usual during the pandemic, that I'll read a book and I finish it, and then I go on to the next one, and I can't remember what I read last week. I'm just sort of like, I just totally have forgotten what did I read last week. But that's never was something that really struck me. I think it was 800 pages, and I just flew through it. I think I read it in about 4 days.
Wow. You look out for that one. What about you, Leslie? Have you got a book you're reading at the moment?
I have. I'm actually reading this one at the moment, Verity.
Oh, I've got that to read.
I tell you what.
I've seen that. I've seen her. I haven't read Colleen Hoover, and I see her name on all of her sellers.
Oh, she's hoovering up the sales at the moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a page turner, and it's quite steamy. It's quite.
Yes, someone's put on Twitter, and I said I've just received a copy of this. They said, "Oh, watch out, it's steamy."
Yes, read that one.
Are they all like that, or just that one in particular?
I'm not sure. I have a feeling they may all be like that. I don't know. I can't say, because this is the first one I've read. But
Verity. Verity. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
And also, I like this because it's about a writer. It's about a writer who is engaged to do the ghostwriting for another really popular writer who's had some kind of accident and can't complete the book. It's
funny. The book that I'm writing now involves a writer and some ghostwriting, but it's different. It's that, and I'll tell this much without, even though it's a whole year away, but I can tell you this much. I'm writing about a guy who's rather critically well received, but unsuccessful in terms of sales writer, who's offered an opportunity to write backstories for relocated witnesses. To create whole sort of backstories that they can learn, so that when they're relocated with a new name and identity and so forth, they can say, "Oh, well, this is what happened." Anyway, that's what it's about, and mayhem ensues.
Love it.
Sounds great. I really like that. I've been sent Lucy Foley's The Paris Apartment. Sorry, I'm going to the camera. Yeah, that's the proof copy. So, that should be good. And I've got that one, A Good Day to Die by Anne.
Yes, I've got that one as well, just arrived. Yes.
Quite a few to keep me going. What about you, Lauren? What are you reading?
I'm currently reading and almost finished and have loved Truly, Darkly, Deeply. This is just the proof cover by Victoria Selman. And it is a very interesting story of the family members of a serial killer and how they didn't know and sort of what happened. So, it's very, very, it draws you in because you can't imagine how you wouldn't know. So, and then I got sent today, just now, actually, when we were talking, didn't I? I opened it up. Out of Her Depth by Lizzie Barber, which I'm really excited about reading as well. So yes,
somebody will send you Lisa Gardner's new one, One Step Too Far. I was asked to give a quote for it, and I described it as, "And then there were none meets Deliverance."
Oh wow, what a great blurb. Yeah.
God, Deliverance still brings me out in a cold sweat. It was such a good film, wasn't it? Well, Linwood, it's now time for our fun question. And you've got a choice today. You can either tell us something that's taken your breath away, as going with your title, Take Your Breath Away. So either something that's taken your breath away, something surprising or unexpected that's happened to you recently or in the past, or seeing as the main character in Take Your Breath Away, who's called Andrew Mason, seeing as he is suspected of having done away with his wife, having suspected of got away with murder, we were wondering, what have you ever got away with?
I mean, this is sort of blatantly self-promotional, so I don't mean it to be that way. But I was very surprised a few years ago when I sort of learned indirectly that someone who was reading and loving my books was a guy named Stephen King, and that kind of was a bit of a stunner. And so I was quite surprised at that because I mean, there's, I think, a general feeling among a lot of us as authors is that you write these books and you get them out there and you're not really sure if anyone's looking at them. Is anyone really buying any of them? And when you hear a review or something, you think, wow, someone actually read it. So that was a very pleasant surprise. And as far as I'm trying to see if I can do both of these. If I got away with something, I suppose, just on a regular basis, ignoring speed limits. But I should say this is something I don't do anymore, just in case my insurer is watching. But especially when I was a kid in my teens, I just drove like crazy. And so it's a good thing that I actually am still here. There was I was driving to school when I was at the age of 16, because my father passed away, and I had the family car because my mom didn't drive. And there was this circuitous sort of back route you can get to the school that had hills like this. And I was used to try to hit the hills fast enough to see if I could get all four wheels off the ground, and then come down like it was like a scene out of the movie Bullet or something. And so it's good that it's amazing that I'm here today.
I was going to say, it's a miracle you're still alive.
That's a good thing to have gotten away with.
Okay, right. So what have I got away with? I tell you, the thing I think I've got away with, and like the most proud of really, was when I took my driving test back in the day, back in the 1980s it must have been. And I drove straight over a mini roundabout without looking to see whether there was anyone coming, which is kind of a fail, isn't it, really? But anyway, when we got to the end of the drive, and the driving instructor or the driving examiner tells you whether you've passed or not, and they usually go through all the things you did well and the things you didn't do so well. And he said, well, you drive really well, and the only thing that you did wrong is you drove over a mini roundabout without looking right. Obviously, England, look right at the roundabout. And I managed to convince him that I did check whether there was any oncoming traffic, and that although I didn't move my head, I moved my eyes. And I obviously was such a convincing liar that he passed me. I don't know how it happened. I don't think I'd get away with it now. But,
no, I mean, I failed 4 tests, and driving over mini roundabout was just one of the fails.
Oh God, you're not going to like me then, are you? No. What about you, Lauren? What's the worst thing you've done?
The thing I got away with, about 5 or 6 years ago, before this was my study, this little room, and my husband had bought this monstrosity of a red, shiny storage unit. Like, I cannot describe how disgusting this thing was. And it went across the whole back wall. That's how big it was. And I hated it. And I always said I hated it. I wanted it moved out of my sight. And he agreed to put it up in his study upstairs, but he needed some help moving it. And so I went up the stairs first, carrying it up, and he was pushing it. And I just let go. Like, I didn't intentionally mean to destroy it, but it was quite slippery and not very easy. And it just dropped and it fell to the floor into like loads of different pieces. Well, that's all we've got time for in today's episode. So thank you very much, Linwood, for talking to us and taking the time from your lovely house in Canada and telling us all about keeping pace and about your new novel, Take Your Breath Away, which really did take mine and Leslie's breath away. It's out on the 3rd of February, so please do look out for that.
Yes, we've absolutely loved interviewing you today, Linwood, and we really hope that we can actually meet you in real life one day soon.
Would be wonderful. And thank you for having me on today. It's been a real pleasure, and I do look forward to the day when I can get back over to do some touring. Book tours can be a real grind, but I always have a really good time when I come over to the UK and to Ireland and Scotland and so forth, and tour. And HarperCollins and HQ just do their damnedest to just put on a wonderful tour and meet a lot of people. So it's always fun to come over. So I hope that will happen.
Oh, I hope so too. Really do. No, it's been great. It's been great talking to you. Now, next week, everybody, we will have our second minisode with author and clinical psychologist Philippa East, who is going to be talking to us about how to deal with negative reviews. If negative reviews are the sort of thing that upset you, then Philippa East will put you right and tell you how to deal with it. But
can I just say, revenge is the best way. I would say revenge.
Revenge. Oh, yes. Put them in a novel. Put a reviewer in a novel and kill them off, indeed. But for now, everybody, it's goodbye from Linwood Barclay. It's goodbye from Leslie Cara.
And it's goodbye from Lauren North.